Hi everyone, this is Vo, President and CEO of the San Francisco Bay Area Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I have the pleasure of being joined here today by Mr. Joseph Gercher. Joe, it is such a pleasure to have you here, our only Republican candidate in this California State Assembly race for District 20. We're excited to have you here. We're over at the Salesforce Tower offices for the Chamber here at 415 Mission, and what do you think so far of our new space?
This is just a fantastic building. I got to point out, though, it's miles away in space and time from most of my district, which is a lower middle class district in the East Bay.
We're very familiar. In fact, the Bay Area is our background here, our stomping ground, you know, for everything that we're really talking about, everything that the Chamber's doing, everything that you want to do. And coming from a regional perspective, we're very interested in hearing your thoughts. Now, you are a mathematician, right, by education, by trade.
Yes.
I would like to kind of dive into that, you know, because we've delivered a lot of the same stuff and in terms of like how people want to resolve this symptom or that symptom, but I want to talk a little bit about problem solving a little bit, because that's what you do as a professional, right? You are a problem solver, right?
And I think that's really speaks to one of my qualifications for this position, because what you learn to do is to break problems down to their basic principles and disregard common wisdom, and then to establish a new solution from the pieces of that, which often has a creative aspect to it and is something new. And I think we could use a lot of new thinking in the East Bay.
Certainly. I have seen lots of your videos that are out there. You seem to have been at this for quite some time. It seems like there are no other maybe Republicans standing in your way, and you seem to almost have like a clear lane, and you know, but you've also been running for like multiple election cycles, and
Only one. No,
oh really?
Yeah,
just one?
Yeah, just one.
Just this one?
4 years ago, the current assemblyman was not opposed, and so I ran as a write-in candidate.
Okay.
But you know, this is a really, I gotta tell everybody, this is an awful lot of fun. You get to meet people like Vo and the other candidates, and you get asked a lot of interesting questions. If you just run against an incumbent, you really don't get too much interaction with anyone.
There's a lot of sort of like status quo that is sort of driving the political landscape, and we seem to kind of not get out of this mired situation that we have, from many people's vantage point. I would say that some people might be okay with the status quo, and so we're here to talk about what your concerns are. We would like to, first of all, start with asking you, who is Joe Gercher, right? Tell us about you and a little bit about your background, how you got here.
How I got here? Well, I got here, I started in Minnesota. I was born so far up north that it's almost Canada, and in a little town where you could walk half a mile in any direction and you would be in the North Woods. And then I went to the University of Minnesota and then the University of Illinois. And when I got a job offer in California, this is the Golden State, so I came to California, and I've been here most of my life now, working in the government labs as a mathematician and a computer scientist in government labs in Alameda County.
That's amazing. So now that brought you over into the Bay Area, and how did politics and such get into the horizon here?
I've never been particularly political. I always thought, you make your decision a couple days before you go to the ballot box. But, after the pandemic, it just seemed natural to get more involved. And as I say, when there's not an incumbent, then it's really a wide open race.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've seen you approaching things from the macro and the micro perspective with regard to the things that you are vocal about. In fact, one of the comments that was shared with me about your running in this race was that Joe has concerns about a lot of things. and I thought, okay, this guy's got some interesting stuff to say, and so I had to get online and kind of see what exactly these issues were, and it kind of took me back to I think like 2016 when I saw some of the earlier videos, and And so, you've been kind of like in the
There was no videos back in 2016. All we had was
18, was it? Was it?
18. Didn't run then because
Oh, no Canada videos, but I think you were interviewed by folks, I believe.
no,
No?
I can't recall that.
Okay, we're gonna have to put them out here. Well, I'm gonna share those here in the links
Okay.
in the interview here, so
Okay.
you guys can check those out. But very curious though that you were like looking after some issues relating to gas tax back then and how money is spent, and so you've got a pretty kind of a close eye on certain things. Tell us about that.
Tell us about the gas, the price of gas.
Your approach, to looking at what's happening in your district.
Well, what's happening in my district is that, as one of my opponents would say, pointing to San Francisco, there are billionaires over here. But in Alameda County, we don't have billionaires. My district is a lower and middle class district, working people. And what upsets me is that we haven't really shared in the wealth. I want some billionaires and some high-tech industry in Alameda County. We do have the Tesla factory, which is a tremendous asset, but it's under attack from my opponent's party. And I'm just really upset about that. I want Alameda County first is my motto.
You're a big Tesla fan.
I am a big Tesla fan because everything that is going to be in the future is going to come from that company, in the same way that everything we have now came from Apple and Intel, Microsoft. The Bay Area is where the future starts, and I hope that we can keep it that way. Right now, Alameda County is losing population. We've lost, I think we lost 2% from last year, and we used to grow 1%. So this ship is not going in the right direction. Things are going to be a lot different in the future unless things get turned around.
Now, if we looked, let's say, at the long tail in terms of the demographic composition of the district. Now, we have several cities that kind of come to mind. Well, first of all, Sunol, I don't understand too much because it's very rural. Okay, so but I figure that if you live in Sunol, you're okay. And, the world is sort of happening around you, right? But now Castro Valley, predominantly white. You got Hayward, predominantly Latino, and you got the Fremont area and Union City, predominantly Asian, and so you got quite a mix there. So now if we look at this sort of long tail there of just the demographics, talk to us about Tesla and maybe how you see all of the different ethnic groups and socioeconomic classes somehow being part of that movement there.
Tesla is a little piece of Silicon Valley that happened to land in Alameda County because we had a legacy automobile factory. But if you go down to Silicon Valley, it doesn't look like Iowa, for example. It's extremely diverse. People, from my experience visiting Stanford University, I have friends who have grown up in China and India and all over the world. It's just not what you think of as I say, Iowa. And the same is true of the Tesla company. Well, the founder was from South Africa. But I did study the demographics of Alameda County quite a bit, and I think the single biggest ethnic component is what's called Asian and Pacific Islanders, a little bit over a third, and then Hispanic is in there, and then white people, what are called white people, are the third largest group.
The people of lighter color.
Yeah, well, it's mainly the most. It is actually probably the most diverse county in the entire country.
It certainly is.
Yeah, and that's because we do have a black population that came here with the Continental Railroads. Basically, that was the origin. Whereas Silicon Valley itself does not have that. It's mostly Asian and white. And then, of course, the Hispanic population goes all the way back, right, to the beginning of California as a state. So it's quite an interesting population, I think. And my motto, Southern Alameda County First, indicates that, you know, if you go down to Fremont or Union City, the attitude there is that they make the money and pay the taxes, and the northern part of the county spends it mostly foolishly. And we'd like to see some intelligence put and some resources put in the southern part of the county. For example, why does Alameda Island have a sandy beach that they've enjoyed for over 100 years and that the state maintains? It wasn't natural, it was built. And so why can't we have a beach like that in southern Alameda County? Why do we have to have all the traffic that the Bay Area puts up with? We are the ones are primarily dealing with it. And my opponents bring this up all the time as well. Let's see, I think Hayward calls itself the heart of the Bay, and that means that everybody is driving through it. But nobody really stops. It's
the artery of the Bay.
Yeah, that's right. In Fremont, they call it the artery, Interstate 580, because that's the main link from the rest of California, really, to the Bay Area. And what I'd like to see is Elon Musk's boring company build a tunnel to take the through traffic off of our freeways.
That's what it's called, the Boring Company.
It's called the Boring Company, right. And the governor has decided that all cars must be electric by 2035. And so it's easy to build tunnels if there's no exhaust. And that would be perfect for Hayward. This is exactly what we need to take the traffic off of what's called the unincorporated areas, which are north of Hayward and south of San Leandro and Oakland. They seem to have gotten the brunt of the freeway construction back in the day. And if we just draw a straight line from where you're coming from and where you want to go and dig a tunnel underneath Hayward, that would enormously improve those areas. So that's just one thing, that and the beach, sandy beach I'd like to build.
So we have an administration right now that does not even utter the word Tesla, right? And so we have some legacy automobile manufacturers that are trying to catch up. And so do you think that there's sort of a chicken and egg thing here? Or well, what needs to happen in order for this vision where Tesla is somehow making their technologies available to the masses? And I'm talking here really, again, that long tail here across demographics. Because
and you're the Chamber of Commerce, right? So
well,
you really know the macro stuff. Well, yeah, that's a really good question. My opponents, one of them represents essentially legacy labor is what I would describe it. And in Silicon Valley, there aren't any labor unions. They're all building the future down there. I, personally can't tell you what's going to happen, but my guess would be that General Motors and Ford won't exist in about 10 years because they cannot actually make electric cars. Do you know how many electric cars General Motors made this quarter, the first quarter?
No.
26.
Okay. Is that progress, or is that,
well,
did they kind of roll it back?
They rolled it back. You may know this because last year they built on the order of maybe, I don't know, a few thousand, and those all had to be recalled because the design wasn't adequate. So I'm not trying to badmouth General Motors. I'm only saying that it's a very difficult, high-tech, completely different industry. And the Tesla factory represents the future. It's just a shame that they were essentially hounded out of California. And you know that, for example, they've built the largest factory in the world in Texas, in Austin, Texas. We could have had that here. If I get elected, I would like to understand why the East Bay cannot get and keep the high tech that we deserve. We have the workers who are willing to do it.
So let's come back to the elections and the dynamic there. So we have, let's say, the majority of candidates coming from the Democratic Party, and then you're the sort of Lone Ranger here, but with a lot of very interesting, innovative ideas that obviously affect us all here. What is the key difference that you see between how you perceive what the priorities are versus where you think maybe the incumbent and the
Yeah,
competitors are
Well, the
focusing.
incumbent didn't run because the Democratic Party is becoming more and more progressive, and he faced a tough race.
So
2
what does that
years
mean
ago.
in this context here, progressive, to you?
Well, like all parties have an establishment branch, and the incumbent represents that. We could go into exactly how the legislature works, but at a certain point, they ask you to sign your life away, or you're just not going to get the resources to run. So
Sign your
that's-
life away to the party?
To the party, yeah. And I mean, I've had friends in Dublin invite state senators in, and they talk about housing policy, and the senator is right on, they agree with him, and then they say, will you vote for the bill the way we want you to vote? And he says, no, I can't, I have to do what I'm told.
Okay, so the party essentially
The
is like its
party,
own
yeah,
mechanism
that's
that
right.
has, you could say maybe co-opted or usurped somehow the way that the people are supposed to
Yes, and
somehow be brought into the whole equation.
Yeah, it's the same on the Republican side. I'm not singling out the Democrats.
Fair
It's
enough.
just they run the state, so there's the ones you have to talk about.
Of course.
Yeah. So I don't know what your original question was.
How the dynamic between the election and the different opponents that are trying to solve the priorities of the
Yeah.
district. So now you're approaching it from a certain vantage point. You said that the Democratic Party, who make up the majority of the candidates that are running against each other, there's a difference between how you look at it.
Yeah. Well,
Don't they want the same things?
I like these people a lot. I've met them. We've had many forums together. I don't think, should I name names or let the viewers?
We're going down the brass tacks here. We're all stakeholders here, and
Okay,
you
well-
know, I'm here
All right.
trying to referee or be just I don't know what am I here? You know, a catalyst for
This is the
for
part,
discourse. You know, where
This might be the part that gets clipped off, just because I'm gonna be blunt. Well, so, Liz and Sean represent the establishment Democratic Party.
Liz Ortega, Sean Kamagai.
Yes,
Okay.
and you can see, in fact, they have exactly the same campaign consultant running their campaigns, Dean and Company out
They
of
roll up.
Sacramento.
They roll up to.
You look at their address for their campaign, it's Dean and Company, and they won't put their name on it, they'll just put the street address.
All right.
But you look up who works there, and it's a thing called Dean. So they represent the establishment side of the Democratic Party.
So let's keep kind of trickling up here. So, okay, so I guess we don't have to focus on Liz or Sean unless you want, but now let's just follow it up. So now this Dean and Company organization now, who's above them, or
Well,
what do you
that's hard to
perceive as
figure-
happening?
Yeah, that's hard to figure out. Let's see, so the way the parties work is that, do you really want me to get into the?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
all right,
definitely.
all right,
Yeah,
okay,
we're
here it comes.
this is a full disclosure here. We're studio close here, just trying to bring it all together here. What's happening?
So what really outraged me was the discovery that most of the money that candidates collect, and I collect no money, comes from outside the district. So my opponents have collected literally millions of dollars from people and companies who do not live here. And I just wonder, what is for sale? Why is it so important for Indian gaming casinos in San Diego to control or contribute millions of dollars to the candidate for assembly from District 20, poor little old Hayward? I mean, the Ohlone Indians don't have any casinos. So anyway, that's the way it is, that most of the money comes from either corporations, such as the Indian casinos, come from labor unions or political committees, and it comes from private individuals. But the private individuals also don't live in the county. I mean, Alameda is not wealthy. Most people aren't accustomed to giving $1,000 of the $2,000 limit. So if you actually do it, and I'm a math guy, that means I do the data analysis. I think of the millions of dollars they've collected, only 6% from maybe 50 or 100 people come from actual District 20 in Alameda County. And I'm just outraged by that. I mean, yeah, okay, you can buy a lot of yard signs, I suppose, but what good does that do to actually represent the people?
So you said that you don't know what's for sale. What do you suspect is for sale? What do you, or do we you know, even have any?
Yeah, well, sure.
Do we have enough to have some strong conjecture?
My wife wouldn't want me to say what I really want to say, so I.
Well, you know, do we have permission to speak? No.
No, I don't think we're going to get that. Well, so what is for sale? That's a good question that you have to ask. Why is it that Alameda County, you know, the best school in Alameda County is in Fremont, Mission High. How come the other schools in Alameda County aren't as good? And this affects everybody. This affects the Hispanic community, the white community, and not all the Asians get to live down in Fremont and go to Mission High. So how come that one school, which gets the same amount of money as everybody else, how come it's so good? And I think you have to really look seriously at reforming the education system for that. Because if you want to, one of the big issues in this campaign, they told me, was going to be affordability. If you really want affordability, you have to be able to get those high-tech jobs. And that means you have to be able to get into a good university and get a technical education. So without that, we're really shortchanging our next generation. It's terrible to compete against what we face in this particular county, because people from all over the world want to come to San Francisco Bay and work in high tech.
You sound more progressive to me than maybe what one might consider to be sort of a garden variety Republican.
I don't know. I haven't met a garden variety Republican, so.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah,
but
right.
This is certainly, I think,
Right.
Something that you are expressing from a deep concern about the community where you live. And
Yes.
so now, coming back to this thing that cannot be named, you have some concerns that there are perhaps some very heavy hands basically on the process. Is kind of what the gist that I got from it. Is that?
Well, sure, there must be.
Is that okay? But you feel like you know something that is very specifically kind of pressing.
No. Well, the thing that
down.
cannot be named is, I'm going to say the word, dear, stupid. Okay. So and this is not my district, but I will point a good example out to you. Okay,
Here I'm thinking like some cabal or something.
No. It's just stupidity, right? Why would
Okay,
you?
yeah. Well, this
Why
is
would
the
you do
collective.
that?
This is the collective result here. We're all in this together, right?
Yeah.
So why it's very important that you really tell us exactly what
Okay.
you're thinking is that ultimately that's what's going to
Yeah,
help
well,
this discourse.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So what's the major infrastructure project in Alameda County in the past 20 years? Okay, we built a $6 billion bridge
Okay.
that goes from Oakland to San Francisco. And that was Barbara Lee, the most powerful congresswoman in the East Bay. That was her baby, okay? So now everybody loves Barbara Lee, right? She's a cultural icon. She voted against the war in Afghanistan. I give her points for that. But what good does that bridge do? It cost $6 billion, and all it does is it allows rich people in Walnut Creek to drive across Oakland, over the bridge to Salesforce Tower, where they're probably making salaries of, what would you say, $1 million for a manager in this building? Sure. So that bridge does absolutely nothing for Alameda County. So that's an example of stupidity, okay? There's no other way you can quantify that. And Oakland, the northern part of our county, is the place where all the politicians live, and they've run the county into the ground for years. When I say southern Alameda County first, I want some of that down in southern Alameda County. For example, why is our shoreline road rubble? How come we didn't get the Warriors Arena in southern Alameda County? Why did it go in down here? You can see it from the Salesforce Tower where we're sitting right now. So, yeah, we had 3 major sports teams, we lost 2 of them, and if the athletics are still here in a couple of years, we'll see, because people don't want to build a new stadium for them. So it just really sad, right? $6 billion just wasted, does absolutely no good for the people of Alameda County, but it does an awful lot for the people of Walnut Creek and San Francisco. That's what I'm upset about.
So these are major infrastructure, issues that are, I guess, affecting, things such as traffic and whatnot. And, when we look at maybe some of the so-called more progressive issues, tell us how these are somehow trickling down and maybe impacting those very things that, let's say, the progressive candidates might be concerned about, such as maybe like crime or some type of, social equity type of, challenge that they might be seeing.
Those are, I know that if you come from that community, then these are important issues to you. But in a sense, they're red herrings, okay? There's a very special thing about the Bay Area, and that is this is a place where the future is born. And it's not a place for normal politics. You have to prepare our students and our people to work in those industries. And the usual politics of, the teachers' unions want to have a salary increase and this and that, it just does not work here, because the rest of the world is racing ahead so much faster. So I think we have to reform education in this state.
Okay.
Right? I want to end teacher tenure. Okay, you know how schools are funded, right? Many years ago, there was a famous lawsuit that required the state to fund the personnel costs of all schools, because otherwise you got disparities. The rich communities could afford to pay teachers more than the poor communities. So all the money goes to the state of California, and it's divided up equitably among the different communities based on the need and the demographics of the student body. Okay, that's fine, but what happens if you've got teacher tenure? Okay, well, your salary as a teacher is based on how many years you've worked there. So even if you're a really good teacher, you don't get a higher salary. In fact, an ambitious teacher will work to become an administrator. They'll get an advanced degree and they'll become an assistant principal. Okay, so here's my idea. No more tenure, the best teachers get the best pay, and the state will continue to pay their salaries, but the state will not pay salaries for administrators. You walk into any school district and it's going to be overloaded with non-teaching credentialed people, okay? If you want to have a whole bunch of non-teaching teachers, then you pay for them yourself. You can put a tax on your local residents and pay salaries for non-teaching teachers. But I only want the state money to pay teachers' salaries. And you can bet what's going to happen if they ask people in Union City or Hayward to raise their taxes so that they can pay non-teaching teachers. Those guys are going to be out the door right away. So you've got to cut that huge bureaucracy down to size. And I agree, teachers are underpaid for what they do, and that's because of this enormous overhead of non-teaching administrators that you find in our schools. The other thing is I want vouchers. Right now in Hayward, they are actually closing schools, right? And it's not because there are fewer students, it's because the demographics of the situation are that many of the people are Roman Catholic, the families, and for them it's acceptable to send their children to parochial schools. And in fact, their education is probably better there because the schools are run more leanly and they have a component of faith, which I think is important. So I think it would be a good idea to allow parents to send their children to any school they want, and the state should pay for it with a voucher. What's wrong with that? We don't have to have all these complicated charter schools and then you fight about should they get a charter or not. Just let the parents decide where to send their kids and let the money follow them. Okay. So I think a few simple systemic reforms would go a long way to improving education in California.
Are we scratching kind of on the surface of what makes the difference between a Republican approach versus the Democrat approach to the same challenge that we all live
Well,
and share?
I can't speak for the Democratic or the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, but yeah. I would
Why did
think
you
that's
identify
one.
as a Republican in the race? It seems like you could have
Oh,
come
well,
at this from any angle, but
no, why am I a Republican? Well,
Sure.
I'll tell you, most Republicans didn't start out as Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
I started out as a Democrat. Does anybody remember Walter Mondale? I shook his hand, okay? This hand. He was the man who ran against Ronald Reagan to be president. He was a Minnesota politician. Anyway, so I started as a Democrat, moved to California. I was making more money than my parents ever dreamed possible, and I wasn't able to save anything. I was living in an apartment, and we weren't getting ahead. So then Ronald Reagan cut taxes, and I became a Republican. So that's a lesson to you young people out there. You're not going to get ahead with the kind of taxes that are being charged on people here in California. So yeah, that's my personal story.
so you're kind of closer to maybe like libertarian. Is that kind of where you're?
I don't know. Yeah.
These labels, I know that they're sort of.
Well, I don't know, unless you're a Republican or spend time looking into Republican politics, you probably really are new to negotiating exactly where people sit. But I think that
I'm learning this as I go along.
well,
I'm in school right now.
actually, one reason I wanted to run was to be able to enunciate this and kind of get it clear in my own mind as well. But I think a basic principle is that parents should decide where to send their kids, and it shouldn't be left up to all these enormous unions that pay millions of dollars to my opponents. And actually, I think, why California spends more money on education than almost anybody, and we always rank at the bottom. I mean, it's just infuriating, right? So we can't continue to spend more money. That's the definition of insanity. Expect a different outcome, spend more money. And you can look at many probably policy issues like that.
Looking at the policy issues and maybe how they're impacting some of these communities, maybe at the level at which they experience the issue, maybe like crime or maybe jobs, healthcare, things like that. Are there any issues that come to mind that you think we can address from the state assembly level right now, like kind of priorities?
Well, actually, I'm not sure that crime is such a major problem. I mean, I know that you have occasional headlines, but I actually looked at the FBI statistics, and in Alameda County, if you look at deaths from gunshot wounds, it's
Which
pretty much
statistics
flat.
would these be? The
FBI crime statistics. You can download them. I downloaded them up through 2020. That takes a couple of years to get them out. So something could have happened.
Is
in
this
the
like the
last 2
Fed,
years.
that Fed report?
Fed-
Yeah.
I don't know enough about that.
There's
I
something
just-
like there's like a Federal Reserve thing that was done
No, this
together
is
with the FBI.
No,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
FBI itself. And now for every city, they will tell you the number of murders. And then you can divide, figure out the population of the city and get the rate per 100,000. But in all the cities of the East Bay, it's pretty low,
But we've
I mean-
interviewed the DAs and the folks running for sheriff, and
Oh, yeah?
they're saying crime is up. They've got their own beefs with each other and why it's up
Yeah,
and so on. But
and they want to increase their budgets too, right?
well, I think what they want to do in the majority of cases is lift the restrictions that keep people on the streets committing crimes.
Yeah, well,
they are supposedly right now a little lenient, and so that's
well,
kind of
that's
the main
of course,
thing. Kind of more support for the police is what I'm
of course, right.
understanding.
Prop 47 is at the root of our problem. It decriminalized petty theft, basically.
Okay, tell us about that now.
Okay.
Is that something that you could?
It has to be
somehow-
repealed, and unfortunately, it was a plebiscite that people voted for it, so it's going to be hard to get rid of it. But what happens is that the police may actually apprehend the folks who commit petty theft, below $900. But the DA says, I'm not going to bother with this. It's just a misdemeanor. And what that does is it allows people to get on a trajectory of committing more crimes.
Yeah.
And then you see these really organized criminals, right, to do the smash and grab types who have come in after that. So, yeah, I think you simply have to enforce the laws that you have now.
What do you think the most pressing issues are for District 20 right now? You know, you mentioned traffic, but I mean, if you could just kind of like prioritize, I mean, I know you want to see some infrastructure improvements, and clearly you mentioned the way the funding is making its way to where it should go.
Well, by the way, just to tie up the crime situation, the only place in the East Bay that had a high crime mortality rate from the FBI was Oakland. And why is that? Well, Oakland is really where the drugs go to get to San Francisco. And so you do have probably a dozen violent drug gangs there, and they do cause collateral damage in the community. And it's just a shame. And then when Governor Brown was the mayor of Dublin, he basically defunded the police there. I mean, my next door neighbor was an Oakland police officer, and he left the department. He was in the union, he had seniority, so he found another policing job. But that's what happened to Oakland. The police were defunded a long time ago. They stopped enforcing, and it just grew out of control, given the fact that they are at this critical juncture where drugs go through to San Francisco. So, yeah, it's a shame, you know.
So you think that Oakland's been captured?
It's not my district, so I don't have to
But
worry
that
about it.
your neighbors, I mean, clearly.
I'm tired.
Alameda
I'm not going to
County.
do anything for my neighbors, okay?
Yeah.
They built the $6 billion bridge from Oakland to San Francisco. That's not on me, and I'm not going to spend any more money for Oakland. I want
So you see this as like a very regional kind of thing, right?
Well, I'm the only person who speaks for these people.
For District 20.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at southern Alameda County. Most of the people live there, but 3 of the county supervisors live in Oakland. So how is that fair, okay? I'm the only one who stands up, is District 20.
So you think that the relationship between these municipalities is broken? I mean,
Well, yeah, sure. And the reason it's broken is because it's purposely, the governmental system is purposely overlapping in such a way that you can never find who's responsible for anything. So, yeah, it is. I mean, so we're sitting here in Salesforce Tower, to bring it back to where we are. Okay, this is land that was redeveloped by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which is the most powerful government agency in the whole Bay Area, all right? And what are they doing? They're building skyscrapers in downtown San Francisco. They are not helping out the traffic congestion in District 20 or Hayward or the Dublin grade over to Dublin and Pleasanton. So that's what I mean when I say southern Alameda County first. And I'm just really upset at these overlapping jurisdictions. Many of them are not even elected, right? You can say, oh, the city councilman also sits on the Transportation Commission. Oh, yeah, well, that's a fig leaf, but he doesn't have any power there. So, yeah, I'm upset about that.
Okay, so now, let's say, now we're speaking to the electorate here. We're talking to the Assembly District 20, right, where these are at least 5, major cities there within that area. Now, what would you say to them is the framework that you want to follow to kind of pull District 20 out of the quagmire into the new?
That's a good point. Well, so there's not much you can do as long as California is a one-party state, because you go to Sacramento, if I win and a few other Republicans win, we can prevent the Democrats from having a supermajority. So at least they have to do what the governor wants them to do. Right now, the state legislature is completely out of control. But short of, a major flip in Sacramento, what I'm trying to focus on are speaking for the people of my district for common sense solutions that will improve our lives. And that's why I've said the Shoreline Park, they're gonna wanna spend $500 million to protect the road rubble that's on the Hayward shoreline. Why not put a sandy beach there before we spend all that money? That's why I wanna use Elon Musk Boring Company to put through traffic underneath Hayward and get it off of our freeways and make life more convenient.
He builds tunnels.
He will build tunnels, yes. And by the way, they'll run them too. You don't have to, do you know that all the bridges, the San Mateo Bridge and the Dunbarton, those were originally private. They were private corporations that built those bridges. So we can do the same with tunnels. So in other words, I'm looking for things that we can do in our district that only take somebody like me to stand up and say, hey, let's do this, it's a good idea, it will improve things here. Now, fixing the big thing like the teachers' unions or the problem with the state budget, that's gonna take a lot of work in Sacramento. You're gonna have to elect, a lot of different people than we have now.
Now, you mentioned that we need that kind of, that flip of control, and you think that the Democratic Party is kind of too far gone and isn't basically strong enough to kind of speak for what they truly believe, because they clearly have a lot of good people in there that have good values, but there's too heavy of a hand on them that doesn't allow them to.
I don't know.
Or they're not strong enough to kind of step out from under that.
I don't know what's wrong with them. I mean, I'll give you an example. Okay, the infrastructure bill, right? You ready for this story? $1.2 trillion. California is an eighth of the economy, eighth of the population. So 1/8 of 1.2 trillion is 150 billion. I think I did the math on that right. And then it turns out that Alameda County is 4% of California. So
Okay.
4%, all right, you work it out, it's $6 billion. Well, our congressman, Mr. Swalwell, came out and said that there was $4 billion to rebuild bridges in all of California. And he hoped he would be able to rebuild some bridges in our district. Okay, well, I called his office and I said, well, but there's 1.2 trillion, all right, and you only found 4 billion. So where's the rest of the money? I mean, California gets 150 billion, right? So where's the rest? They couldn't come up with it. The very next day, I got a letter from the congressman with his actual signature on it, listing $40 billion of projects in California, but that's still $100 billion short. So where is the money? I called the assemblyman, the guy I'm running to replace, and I said, do you know where the infrastructure money is going to go? What are they going to spend it on? And the nice lady said, well, that's really a federal question. You should call Congressman Swalwell's office. So they just give you a runaround. I mean, I would really like to know, where is the money going, right? They're going to build another railroad train from no place to nowhere. That's what happened to the last money. And don't think that it's free money. I mean, they're going to tax us to pay for it one way or another, either through inflation or by actually raising taxes. But it's gonna Alameda and my district is going to pay for that, even if we don't see any benefit. Okay. So yes, that's. So I forget how we get there. Yeah, what are the things I'd like to see in my district? I've named 3 specific projects. Is affordable housing really an issue? That's what they told me would be important. Housing is not affordable, but when I came here, it was just called expensive. So why all of a sudden is it a crisis? I don't know. My wife and I waited 10 years before we were able to buy our first house. Yeah, it's hard, but that's what people do if you want to live in the Bay Area. If you want cheaper housing, a lot of people do move to Las Vegas or to Reno or further east. The weather is not as good, but at least you can have you can buy a house.
So you don't think congestion is really the way to go? I mean, with kind of packing people in and having the more affordable housing, is that kind of with the driver behind that view?
Yeah, I don't see what
like adding
what
more.
Does that do? I mean, we're happy to do it. The state legislature has passed the law, and so if you want to subdivide lots, you can do that. Most of Castro Valley, where I live, is subdivided lots, because a long time ago, the lots were big enough so that you could have a garden in your backyard, and that's what you lived off of. And all those lots have been subdivided since World War II. That's, that's fine, but along with that, you also have to prepare the schools to handle the extra kids that are coming in. That's why I'm saying I want to use infrastructure money to build schools. The state will give money for the teachers' salaries, but they won't build the school. And you look around our communities, yeah, there is one nice school in Dublin, which is way overcrowded, by the way. But the people in Dublin have stepped up and they've supported that school. But all the other high schools are, on the order of 50 or 60 years old. By the way, isn't it funny that all the city halls are brand new, nice shiny new buildings with fancy architecture? So those city politicians are looking out for themselves. And what I want to do is look out for the kids. So
What do the kids need?
the kids need better education, and they should have a new building.
The teacher thing, having better teachers and less.
Well, that's important, and I've told you how
Staff,
to address that
yeah.
by getting rid of the administrators. And also, I'd like to see exactly what goes on down in Fremont Mission High, and see if that same model can be used elsewhere. But in any case, if you give parents the ability to put their kid in any school they want, you bet, by vouchers, you bet that those schools will change quickly. In fact, I've known two families, one of them a Berkeley University professor, and they literally moved to Fremont simply to get their kids into Fremont Mission High. Because if you get there, then you get that university offer from Harvard or Stanford or Princeton, and that's just the way it goes. But yeah, so schools are really important.
Are there any unique asks that the different constituencies are making of this assembly district leadership, coming back to the whites, blacks, Latinos, Asians? I think that I mentioned that the ones that are, the cities that are predominantly either white, Hispanic, or Asian are kind of sticking out in the census reports. So are they wanting anything specific?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not
because,
that.
well, down there in Fremont, they do have Fremont Mission High, which is mainly what the parents are concerned about for their kids, right? But I think, if you're going to be a diverse electorate, if you're going to really have a melting pot, then all this race stuff doesn't really matter.
Right.
And I'm not going to name a name, but there is one of the opponents who just can't get that out of their minds. Race this, race that. And I listen to him, and I think this is so 1960s. I mean, yeah, sure, there's problems someplace, but how is that going to make things better here? And besides, there's lots of folks. We're a pretty well mixed group. There's lots of wealthy people living in the hills of Oakland, and they're not white people. So as I say, white people are a minority in this. And white people are not all white either. So.
What is your heritage?
I'm Croatian.
Croatian.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I grew up in this little place in northern Minnesota, and mostly it attracted immigrants from all the poorer countries around Europe. So you sort of knew that this family was Italian and that family was from Finland and my family was Croatian. Nobody cared, And I really don't think that people here, I mean, my best friend is from China. So what difference does it make?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if there were anything that maybe if there was anything that was standing out, from each of these pockets, these communities.
Well, I think it is true that what are called the unincorporated areas, and that's the communities of Ashland and Cherryland, have gotten a bad rub because it's impossible for them to incorporate. They don't, as Liz Ortega herself explained, they don't have enough economic base there to support a city government. So they're just kind of stuck in this, You know, Castro Valley is so large, maybe they could do it, but, you know, it's nice being unincorporated. You don't have to pay for a mayor. The county does a decent job. But yeah, I think that because these communities are kind of sandwiched between different supervisor districts, nobody really looks out for them as well as they could. Now, some of the supervisors have tried, and you can point to new buildings that they've put up, community centers. But yeah, and one of the ways you could help those areas would be to put the through traffic in the tunnel and get it out of the freeway that goes through everybody's backyard. So yeah, I mean, there is a legitimate grievance there in the unincorporated areas. But once you get down to Union City, it's a bedroom community for Silicon Valley. That's as far south as the district goes. And they're doing fine, you know.
What are your thoughts on business and that whole socioeconomic development aspect to how businesses are brought in? You mentioned Tesla and bringing that in, and there are a lot of reasons, you know, behind that. But now talking about small business, are there issues that you think are impediments maybe that you want to change?
There's a big difference, you know, but there's a lot of different chambers of commerce. So I'm just going to push back on you there. You know, the Chamber of Commerce that I saw in Hayward was just a bunch of little local people, right, running a realtor's office or a restaurant. So that's the kind of Chamber of Commerce that I see, little small family businesses, and they're just swamped by regulation. You talk to somebody about what it takes to get a liquor license in California, you would be amazed. Okay, and it takes years, all right? And similarly, I knew a woman who was a dentist, for example. You think, oh, upper income, everything is great. Well, if she wants to put an x-ray machine in her office, she has to get a license from the city, okay? And as she said to me, what does the city know about operating an x-ray machine? They don't know anything about it, okay? She's the expert. They're just using these licenses to make money. So I would say, fine, if a city wants to require permits and all that stuff, just two things. Number one, they have to decide in 1 month, all right? What a businessman wants is certainty. They want to know, am I going to get it? Am I not? Then I have to make another plan. Okay, the second thing, the city cannot charge for the license, okay? So now if the city council all of a sudden realizes it's got to pay all of these licensing staff clerks to issue stuff that they are not going to get paid for, it's all going to go away, right? So that's the simplest way to get rid of it. And on a state level, there's something called the Code of California Regulations. Have you ever seen that? It adds 100 pages every week. So every year, you've got 5,000 more pages of the California Code of Regulations. What the heck is that for, okay? Just ridiculous, yeah. So regulations, that's number one for small business.
So kind of bring us home here and tell us, kind of in summary, what is the state assemblyman position in government, its role, and why you are the man for the job?
Well, I'm the man for the job because I have a background in science, which teaches me a certain way to approach problems. And that is to break them down into their pieces, look at what you can do to it, how they fit together, and come up with a novel solution. For example, put the through traffic in a tunnel, get it off of our... The other reason is because I think, in fact, some of the local political reporters have commented, I'm the only candidate who's really come up with new ideas and something specific that you can hang your hat on, and not just, oh, it's a tough problem, we have to look at it and maybe have a committee to investigate this some more. And the third one is I genuinely care about the people of Hayward and the Hayward area. I am not collecting money from Indian casinos and from big organizations all around the state, okay? I only care about Hayward, and I want to see it get better. I've been living here a long time, and I've noticed that it really never has improved in a sort of significant way, and that's what I want to do. I want Southern Alameda County first. I want our area to be better than it is now.
And what is the role of the state assembly, and why that vehicle? Well, why choose that versus some other position in government?
Actually, the reason is because it's the only elected position that really encompasses all of southern Alameda County. And I don't want to be captured by Sacramento. I would rather spend my time going to the Board of Supervisors or to the city government and saying, hey, you guys are not really looking out for what's best. What about the unincorporated areas? How come we can't do something better for our schools? And then, of course, the state legislature is the go-to guy for getting special bills through that help your area, and I'm happy to do that. But they're gonna have to talk to me and take my ideas into account, and I'm gonna ask for something that's best for the whole area, not just narrowly defined interests.
Who is supporting your race?
Me, I'm the only person.
You're self-funded.
Somebody gave, one generous donor gave me a check and I haven't cashed it yet.
So you are self-funding your campaign.
Yes.
And so how is that working out? I mean, you're clearly
Yeah, and you know
out
what?
there.
I will put, one of the bills I will put in, and it has no chance.
You sell
of
some
getting-
Tesla stock when it was.
Yeah, that's right, before it went down. But I will put a bill in that requires that politicians can only take donations from real people who live in their district, okay? As I say, why do my opponents need $1 million? All they're doing is paying some consultant in Sacramento a good salary does absolutely no good for Hayward or Union City or Castro Valley. So I will cut that off. And of course, if a union wants to donate through their political committee, that's fine. But the donation has to come from the union members who live in the district. They all have computers. They can find out, how much dues they've collected from Hayward or San Leandro and figure out proportionally. But it's got to be local money, because this is just out of hand. You've got this class of people in Sacramento, whiz kids, who are just messing up the state, spending money that doesn't really come from the people they're supposed to be governing. Another thing I'd like to do is I'd like to have the state legislature meet for 6 months every 2 years, not continuously for 2 years. What are they doing? They just fight about major policy decisions, which is just a bunch of hooey, or as President Biden would say, malarkey, right? So yeah, I have a big chip on my shoulder when it comes to Sacramento, and I would change that.
Okay, well, I think in closing, we'd love to know how people can get in touch with your campaign, how they can support. Tell us.
Well, that's the problem, because my campaign site is Joe Gercher for AD20.
Okay.
All one word, but you have to know how to spell Gercher. That's the hard part. So
Okay.
it's Joe, Grcar,
Okay.
for AD20.
All right, well, there you have it. And so I think that we will be looking for, the response from the electorate, to the platforms that are being shared by all these other candidates, and especially in response to what you're looking to share, and see how this all
Right.
coalesces,
Yeah,
and
right.
see what the future has in store for us.
And the Indian casinos, you can call the Indian casinos. You can call and ask them why they're giving the money. Call Congressman Swalwell and ask him where the other money is. Where's their infrastructure? I mean, it's not all on me, folks. You've got to stand up for your rights, or it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it sounds like you need a bigger megaphone. Maybe the whole media side of the campaign is probably the next horizon for you as far as.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can advertise
progress.
in media, but the newspapers are very fair in writing their articles about all the candidates. But of course, when it comes to making editorial decisions, they're going to come down on the Democrat side, because they're Democrat papers here. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Don't believe them, folks. Vote for what's best for your family.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Joe, to have
All
you
right.
here. We wish you the best in your campaign, and you have a lot of great
Yes,
ideas.
yes. All right.
It's really exciting to see
Thank you, Bo.
some innovative approaches being taken to some of the socioeconomic challenges we all share. So There you guys have it. Mr. Joe Gercher, running for State Assembly District 20.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.